Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to Bayliss Public Library. My name is Ken Miller. I'm the library director. I'd like to thank our featured poet, Julie Barbour, for joining us tonight. The Friends of the Library for providing the refreshments, and I can vouch for them. The library's program committee for putting all of these programs together that we do. Nancy Gillette, Maggie Johnson, Debbie Lehman, Ashley Fonger, and the chair, Susan James, who's back at the camera. Susan, thank you all very much. There's a sign-up sheet at the table in the back. If you haven't signed up yet and would like to read tonight, be sure that you sign up. We'll have a break where you can sign up if you haven't already. So be aware of that. Tonight's featured poet is Julie Brooks Barbour, who teaches creative writing and poetry at Lake Superior State University. She also edits the journal Border Crossing. She has an MFA in creative writing from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. And in 2001, she was the recipient of an artist enrichment grant from the Kentucky Foundation for Women. Julie has a new book out called Come to Me and Drink that's available tonight for purchase and signing. After her reading, there will be a brief break, like I said, and then an open mic, and you are welcome to read your work at that point. Please join me in welcoming Julie Brooks Barbour.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Let me get myself situated. I want to just make a brief announcement. We've got some really fun things happening next week on our campus. Nikki Finney, who won the National Book Award for Poetry, is coming next week. We're going to offer a master class from 2 to 3 p.m. If you want to be part of that master class, you do not have to have any kind of special training whatsoever. You just come, be part of the group, and write. And if you want to be part of that, Janice Repka is here tonight. She's sitting right there. Raise your hand. She'll sign you up for that master class if you'd like to be there. But it's 2 to 3 p.m. next Thursday, October 4th. And then that night we'll have a reading by her at the Kenneth Shoulder Library Auditorium. And it really, guys, if you've never heard this person read, it's really an experience. There's nothing like it in the world. So if you're interested, please come by. Okay. I'm going to read first from my chapbook, Come to Me and Drink. And I like to say that my sister did the artwork for this. So I was very, very lucky to have, I'm very, very lucky to have such a talented, artistic sister. I'm going to read a couple from this chapbook, and then I'll read some newer things. Yeah.
Could you adjust the mic up a little bit more for those of us that are hard of hearing?
I'm sorry, and I'm having trouble talking because of oral surgery. So help me, Susan.
He just left.
Okay. And I'll try to, is that better?
Yeah,
okay,
a little better.
Sorry about that. I'll try to project as much as I can. Well, obviously it's the first time I've read from it because the page is hard to turn. The first poem is called Laundry Day. Corner by corner I hang the sheets, dark blue, red, a floral print tattered at the edges. They whip themselves into one another with the breeze, sometimes twisting into a snarl. My mother would drape her white sheets one over 2 lines, a tent I would run through. I show my daughter what I used to do. She follows with mud under her fingernails, hair hanging in her face, her smile the same as any child dirty among the wash. Next door, my neighbor's white shirts flap like sails, armpits stained yellow. Across the street, the widow hangs her briefs to dry. It is a bright, clear day among the houses. Dusk to dust. True natives, we eat with dust in our mouths, grit in our teeth. Some days, dust hides the world from me, my children from me. I fish with wet cloths for their mouths, fighting the choking dirt that lines the creases of my palms and the seams of my dress, dusts my brown hair black, settles between my sheets, swirls and curls over the floor. It's a wonder we live. But if one of us were to give in, lay down for final rest on this soil, it would never take us in. It's too worn to hold even itself, like powder it takes to the wind. I gotta get a drink of water already. Okay. Bed rest. The world puts itself on hold, weighing trees and power lines with ice, quieting electric hums. The apartment grows colder, the furnace stopped. Child, hold on. This city is no home for you yet. The cats burrow under blankets, and the dog seeks humans for heat, but curtains hung in a doorway will not keep you warm. Stars in the black sky, once muted by streetlights, do not offer beams bright enough to see by. I tried to imitate the stillness of the world outside, but a bitter bed is no safe haven. Hold on, child, hold on. Watching. It was a haunting, a shadow, a hawk making a meal of crow on my patio. I watched the hawk pick his prey clean, gulping strips of flesh. Then he vanished. I craned my neck to see what was left, a skeleton perfectly intact, a museum piece, reflecting the late afternoon light. On the other side of the patio, my young daughter stood at the door, palms pressed against the glass. Neither she nor I stirred. It was a moment left to itself, a vision I woke from in the morning and kept glancing back toward with a mother's attentive eye that could only watch. Starlings. While I rock my daughter to sleep, fledglings try their wings on the other side of the window, flapping up and down so crookedly it's as if they were on strings. The phone rings, the timer dings, the old desires rise up, dancing, laughter, familiar faces from my youth. I rock them to sleep with the baby, back and forth, ignoring the phone, the supper in the oven. Let it all burn. The young birds outside are learning to light on tree branches and shoot toward the clouds. The baby sighs and shifts into slumber. I put myself at ease, admiring the bird's black feathers as the sun shimmers them green. Because the days are not always filled with light, and this is the first line of the poem. It should go right into it, but it doesn't. Because the days are not always filled with light, because the stars beam far away, because a child cries in the night from terrors, weeping and forgetting how to stand. Ghost of my longings, why should there be anything other than this, my lot? Because in the hour of the lung, the blue hours breathe easy, because the words speak as if they had a voice, because it is their blood I know like my own. Ghost of my grandmothers, standing now before me in human form, a young teacher in dreadlocks or with blonde hair. Because there is honesty and redemption beyond office towers. Because a child welcomes me back home. Remind me of duty. Remind me who it is I love. I'll read the title poem. I don't have it marked, but I think I should read the title poem. Come to me and drink. I know what she tastes, the ambrosia that one morning fell in drops from my breast to my arm. Tasting it, my tongue recalled the white and yellow blossoms of honeysuckle sprouting wild along a field's edge. Collecting vine upon vine, I pluck each sweet blossom, pull out each green stamen, careful not to lose the drop of nectar at its tip, delighting my tongue with the watery sugar. Now the gods put me on the vine. The buds of my nipples are pink and dripping. An infant plucks me dry, a sweet smell on her breath. This liquid, a heal-all for a stomachache, a sedative for the sleepless child making her bed in the field's tall grass. Her lips suckle in sleep. Her tongue clicks in her mouth in exercise. The passing breeze, my voice, whispering around her ear. My arms, vines, coaxing her to come to me and drink. The baby discovers. Her mouth is a cavern that begins the longing of her human life. My breast, a ball, and the orange nose of her doll all warrant a search by the finely tuned buds of her tongue. Nothing escapes. Bits of torn paper and a cat's whisker are pulled from her mouth, turned over by fingers, investigated by eyes, tried again by taste. Her tongue will never want for these small things so eagerly again. Once her fingertips learn the odd tingle of sensation, once her mouth learns certain textures it touches have no taste, no smell, then she will yearn for the candies, the soft creams melting in her mouth. One day, she will seek softness and warmth beyond my breast, the smoothness of someone else's skin against her lips, and every inch of her body will learn what now her tongue only knows, what now her mouth opens itself toward. And then I'm going to read the last poem in the chapbook. Music for the night, music for the day. To have been a farmer's bride, rising alone, eating toast and sausage before waking the children, husband already out in the barn, collecting tools for the day's work, or on a cold morning, littering the floor with splinters of wood. Instead, I married a poet and his child, who lie awake listening to the night, who darken their rooms against the morning light that I still revere no matter how I wed. They pose questions to the dark, follow the phases of the moon, speak to its many eyes and mouths. From those dark spaces, they hear music, soft and indiscernible to me, songs loosened by a beam of light from the hall, or my own voice calling out to those chords. Lover of the morning, I swoon to the crow's rough call and the dove's soft whisper. They court the barred owl's shivered chant, the dog's lonesome aria. Each in our own worlds, I marry the farmer and take my breakfast alone. Well, that's just a little bit of it. Do you want some more? Okay. I'm going to read some newer work I'm currently working on, and a lot of the poets and writers in the audience will understand about putting the bigger book together, the full-length book that's not 20 pages, but 48 or more pages. So that's where I'm working towards now. It's kind of going in drafts and such, but I want to read some poems from there, and then I'll read some newer work that I'm working on, and I'll kind of talk to you a little bit about where these things are going, because some of them need to be put in a context because they're still being put into a context. But this is, I'm starting to write poems about growing up as a woman and growing up in the South. And I decided that I was going to write a poem for my alma mater. But I also wanted to write about my college experience, which, if you know, a lot of you have been undergraduates, and you know that that's kind of a coming of age time. So this is called North Carolina College for Women, 1992. We knew we were women. I mean, there were boys about, and we knew that need. We also had the need to be taken seriously outside of our hometowns, away from parents and secrets that we didn't want to discuss. When we went home, we were still girls, and we didn't want that, so we didn't go. We stayed on campus for the weekend and bought greasy cheeseburgers and danced at clubs and slept with boys. But the next day, we didn't mention the boys. We shared poems, and maybe the latest oil painting of a mermaid rising up out of green tides. We were always broke. We walked everywhere, wanted everything. We shopped consignment and praised one another for our finds of cardigans and costume jewelry. There was so much to love, except ourselves, but we never let on. Poetry and art would do. They would stand in place of self-love, and it worked. It worked so well, we never gave it up. And of course, I'm also writing about home, and I'm writing about motherhood, so these next couple of poems are focused on that. And you all, a lot of you probably took home economics classes when you were in junior high and high school, and this is, even have a man who's taken a home economics class. So you'll understand where this is coming from. This is called home economics. Across from the wood shop, in a classroom lit with fluorescents, I would learn a trade, though all I knew of the kitchen and sewing machine was the breakfast in my stomach and my mended clothes. I learned a little more. My biscuits cooked into the next class, dry and overdone. My apron went home without pockets. And the egg I carried around for a day, a symbol of motherhood, a friend dropped on the lunch table. At the end of class, springtime, I stood outside in a flowered dress and pumps and chose apples for cider, handing the good ones over. That would be the extent of my knowledge, how to choose what to keep and what to leave behind. What turned? Everyone I knew understood how to reach out and welcome help, but I waited on a hand-me-down couch holding a baby, and the phone never rang. No one knocked on the door. No voices but the cries of the baby, and a letter from my mother saying that my daughter needed me, something I knew more deeply than what I'd studied or memorized: poetry, classical drama, the words to songs I loved. Those didn't dig so deep. Those didn't cut into the marrow or leave me sick and spinning or hungry for what turned on the other side of that door. And I've been writing poems about insects, so you're going to hear a couple of those tonight. I blame Keith Taylor for that. This is called Moth. Fluttering around my garments in the closet, circling the bedside lamp, the cat will have you. Don't come in, stay out. Follow the firefly's rhythmic glow. Make friends. This home cannot offer you anything but hunger. Full tilt, full moon. I bark at my daughter for not noticing stray bits of paper on the floor, at my husband for ignoring the full laundry baskets. I'm at full tilt, full moon. My mother warned me by sharing similar days of growling bear-like, her normal self unrecognizable. I try not to speak or growl. I try not to bite. Once, pregnant and full of hormones, I sunk my teeth into the flesh between a friend's shoulder and neck, vampiric. He's states away, but if he would loan that space of flesh to me now, I would take it. I would rip it apart. There should be fire. It smells like fire in the study, my daughter claims, though this fire is only the gas heat radiating through pipes in the walls because of the sudden chill outside, the bitter wind arriving with rain, cold that burrows to the bone. There is no fire in the study, though I imagine the pages of books turning to ash, brittle and black, that corner of the house charred. There is no fire in the study. I have not sat there for weeks, pulled away, but there should be a fire in the study, and it should blaze. Flames should burst the window panes, lick the siding. There should be a fire so strong the whole neighborhood, the whole town would see the smoke rising skyward, and sirens would greet it. Sirens would scream its name. Oh. You read for this long, you gotta take breaks. Okay. I'm gonna head now into some poems that are, I think everybody, I was talking to my students today and telling them that we all write what we know, we all write what we grew up with, we all write from this place of experience. And so I'm heading back to that little place of experience, you know, childhood, or, you know, well, childhood, yes, and maybe pre-adolescence. But this poem is going to lead into those poems. This is called Glimpses. You never forget what was lost. A favorite pendant dropped down a vent shaft. The last breaths of the first family dog. Gradually, you learn to let these things keep their shapes in your life, even after they've become shadows. Even your own child slowly slips from your life. First steps, first sentence, first day of school. Her old clothes, too small now, take up space in the basement, sealed into bins, saved for no other reason than a look back. Igniting the air. Afternoons at my grandparents' house, waiting for the end of my father's workday, I spent the hours reading to my aunt, who rarely left the front bedroom except to warm her hands over the kitchen's wood stove or eat small bites of food. Afternoons, I collected pamphlets or old magazines from cluttered tables around the house, then cracked my aunt's bedroom door and asked to enter. She always let me in, her faint voice coming from the top corner of the bed, head lifted slightly to greet me. Once I started, the sense of the words didn't matter. I loved their sounds. They rolled off my tongue, igniting the air, putting every dresser, every chair, every book in the glass cabinet at attention. My aunt listened intently, even on the afternoon I read from a pamphlet bordered with roses, even though the words spoke through me like advice, even when I stalled at one I'd never seen before, depression, even when I kept going like all good readers. When I finished, I waited for her to praise me like usual. I waited in that hushed room, light struggling through the heavy curtains. I waited, but no sound came from the bed, not a rustle or sigh. My grandparents' attic. The only unfinished area in the house, the air held me close, pressing in, but I stayed, searching for what my grown cousins left behind. Comic books, wood-burning kits, and marked pages of schoolwork, scattered among boxes for safekeeping or one day's garbage, the only facts of their childhoods. They hit puberty before I was born. My father married late, so I rummaged alone, needing to study a cousin's handwritten vocabulary words, unfold game boards to trace the patterns of boredom, turn a geode over in my hands, and stroke its spiny edges. The dark recesses of the attic peered from a far corner, accessible only by the ability to balance on plywood boards. Lace curtains hung at the window, gray with dust and dotted with dead flies, their cousins still trying to find a way out at the corners, greeting me each day with their small swarm. The few times she realized where I was headed, my grandmother begged me not to go up to that room, aware of its appearance, but I couldn't stop, drawn to the rusted bed with its flattened, stained mattress, the tubes of old paints, stuffed animals boxed and waiting. My family told few stories. They related only childhood antics or what time dinner would be ready. The old secrets stayed hidden, washed away each time I cleaned the dust from my hands. Next one is called Petty Thefts. Dollar signs, dollars watched, black and white labels in the pantry. I knew what I couldn't have. At friends' houses, I coveted their possessions, magazines addressed to them, porcelain dolls I couldn't touch. Out shopping, I watched a friend add to her collection of small purses. Because I knew it was wrong, I hid my first theft under my bed, then started collecting. One afternoon, I slid a stack of stolen magazines into a garbage can in the tool shed, burying them among food scraps and withered napkins. When I heard my father's truck pull into the driveway, I hurried to the basement door where I could enter the house unnoticed. Never caught, I'd do it again, this time from a department store where my mother worked. I concealed a tiny colored pencil in my hand, part of a set, a trinket I wouldn't keep. Before we left the store, I dropped it on the carpet, a tiny sound my mother heard and spun around to catch me. I was punished, grounded for 2 weeks. I erased my mistake with baptism and was praised, given gifts, taken out for state dinners. Perhaps I knew the price of what I wanted. Making a game of it. My aunt faces my grandmother's closet and pulls a bright blue blouse from the rack. She buttons the blouse over a tank top, admires the fit in a mirror, turning from side to side, a child trying on her mother's clothes. Whatever she likes, she heaps onto an armchair, and the pile begins to tumble. 10 minutes away in her son's house on the river, my grandmother has made temporary home of a downstairs bedroom. From armchair to bed, she carries a sheet of notepaper with the word radiation written in red capital letters. If she learns to live with it, define it, perhaps it will become something anyone does, part of a life. 10 minutes away, her eldest daughter adds to a new mound on the floor. Dresser drawers unloaded, coats and shoes stacked on the bed. She has asked us to claim her belongings, make lists of the things we like, and take something tangible for memory. My aunt invites me to join her. Do I like this patterned dress, this pair of shoes? The river surged with rain on our last visit, flooding my uncle's yard. A boy in a yellow slicker leaped and splashed in the rising water with his dog. We watched them from the high windows of the house and turned my grandmother in her chair toward the sight. The sky held its darkness all weekend, no sun or stars. The house held us until the river receded. The boy and dog made a game of the storm while they could. Might as well just leave it out. This next one is called Small Movements. And this is going to lead into some other things in just a sec. When there is no wind, only water. When there is no movement but the tide dragging a body by the ankles out to sea, or the river filling a yard to flooding, or the simple sound of a dog lapping water from a bowl. When the sound is less than a roar, doves calling from the roof in the late morning, starlings filling the trees with creaking voices, or the dog's muted dream barking, or the shuffling feet of the nervous man as he speaks, his movement constant in the uncertainty of his own voice. Remember these small stirrings before the green water breaks over the wall, before the wind and sea become so strong you forget how to row. All right, I'm going towards some new poems. I'm writing some prose poems which are in the shape of paragraphs, but they still sound like poems. And they're all in the voices of different women. And I'm going to start this out with a poem I wrote because I have been influenced by Mad Men, if any of you have seen that show. Have you seen it? Some of you have. It's set during the 1960s, and so there are women in there who are, who are kind of confined to the home, they're housewives, but there are also women who are trying to break out of the constrictions of what females are supposed to be like at that time. And Betty Draper is one of those characters who is confined to the home. She was a model, then she became a housewife, and her husband works, he never comes home, he cheats on her. So I'm trying to kind of find women who are having a hard time with the lives that they have. So this is a poem in 2 parts. It's called Lines for Betty Draper. And if you've seen the show, you're going to see some images you've probably already seen in it. But I was really, really inspired by her more than any of the other women in the show. Okay, Lines for Betty Draper. And this is going to lead into prose poems about women in different voices. 1. This feels familiar. This house, your silence, the way you attempt to please and appease. You want to be an angel and even look the part, ivory skin, blonde hair. You were once a model, now housewife and mother, a logical sequence. A house in the suburbs, 2 cars, a maid, a summer house. The American dream. Except this life is not a dream. Your car breaks down and your husband rarely comes home. You take a perfect picture, but you can't live in it. It's only a photo, 2-dimensional. 2. You swing your leg out of bed and step on the glass, breaking it. You pull a shard out of your foot, barely wincing at pain or blood, because this is nothing. This is a broken wine glass, empty. Left beside the bed because you couldn't reach up, barely out. This is not about drinking or how much, but how to blur the lines of this world. Among the Roses. Flames engulfed the garage, the living room, the bed where they slept without touching. She hid among the neighbors' roses and watched the fire. Like an accident on television, it happened far from her and didn't ask that she be involved. Her husband returned home from work and parked across the street. She heard him call her name. A fire engine arrived and emptied gallons of water on the roof and siding. She watched while her husband watched, while the neighbors crowded to watch. She stayed crouched among the roses that burst with scent as the fire fought an onslaught of water, its dark smoke spiraling into the neighborhood. Now, prose poems get a little weird, so they're going to be just a little bit weird and off-kilter, but that's about normal for prose poems, so I'm just warning you ahead of time. Probably should have warned Jeff before that poem, but the next one is called Shelled. Her back hunched toward the floor. Her family stood upright on the opposite side of the room. She wore a black shell that could splinter if split just right. Her mother's angry face revealed the reason for the curvature, her fault. A shell sticks fast, but one night she pulled hard and crawled out. A wall of mattresses stood outside her home. Any other shelled creature would crawl between them and hide, but she scaled them, skin white in the moonlight, shining bright as any shell. Wildfire, and you can bet you know what happened this summer. This influenced this poem. The wind carried smoke into her town 2 days after the fire began. It was ravenous. She knew that hunger. If it were like hers, it would not be contained. That fire would race over dry pine needles, scorched trunks, dry birds, and mammals out. She read that rangers were creating backfires and flying scoop ship planes over the forest. She breathed in smoky air, deliberated driving to meet it, just to watch. This is something that comes from a news article that I read this summer, and it's called "Why Blue Food is So Rare." So, of course, that generates all kinds of things when I hear that. But this is called "Why Blue Food is So Rare," and that's the title of a news article that I saw this past July. Blue sky goes dark, then black. Call her blue, sitting in the sun under the exhaust pipe from the dryer. Her husband has the car, working. The car is gold. The office building is red brick. Their house is yellow. Her daughter wears an oversized blue shirt to sleep in. The pen she uses to write letters is blue, but also black, like its ink. Her skin has pink undertones. Cut, her skin bleeds red. If run into a bag, becomes black. Unnatural to be blue, some say. Maybe a bluebird or a blue jay, but to be blue inside is to be sick. Darkness settled briefly by some pill or silence, even then, not completely quiet. This is something that was inspired by a poem I read at a Barn Owl Review this summer. It's a little quirky, but I kind of like it. And the quote that I'm working with, the poem is called "On Display," and the quote that comes from the poem reads, "Before I meant to be there, there was a light voice saying, 'Don't sleep in the vending machine.'" Not a worry, not a voice she heeded. If those racks were empty, the light still gleaming behind that glass, she'd break in, rip out the tiny compartments, shell her size 0 body. No charge. The light would illuminate her glittering eyeshadow, the mica in her blush. She'd wear a sequined dress and whiten her teeth. Perfection no one knew out here in the country. She'd be shipped from place to place, a treasure, someone to notice. Among these fields, she noticed only the wind, the way it whipped around the house, flaking the paint job. She thought of the gas station, that vending machine hanging empty. She picked up the phone. Escape. They climbed the mountain. The girl wore only socks on her feet, having forgotten her shoes in the rush to escape. They started anyway, mother, father, sister, brother, other families ahead and behind. She remembered the bookstore closing, the new book display in the window darkened, how she'd wanted something before they left. A solitary woman shut the place down, walking slowly toward the light switch, then blackness. They climbed further, maneuvering around bushes growing out of rock, their moving bodies hidden by clusters of trees. Her toes clutched stone, broke sticks. She felt the power and movement, a force in pushing ahead. I got 2 more. Hold on a second. 2 more of these praise poems, and I'll read you some really, really new stuff that even my closest friends haven't seen yet. Answers. If she could ease the pain in her jaw, her neck, her shoulder, all connected, then she might find a way to ease the pain in her left side, her hip, her leg. Ailments that come with age. Nothing she could have predicted. Not even the psychic said anything to the effect with her crystal ball, her cards, her spaceship to the future. Her mother-in-law's hand took hers, led her to the booth, believing. She was fooled for a little while. The next year, the booth at the amusement park was occupied by a woman selling pies, sweetness, and escape. She walked past, bought nothing, though the sweet scent followed her, just like the scent of the salty ocean, all along the pier. This year, she stayed home, massaged the pain in her jaw, her neck, her shoulder. This year, she made excuses not to visit the relatives. This year, she sat in the sun on her patio and waited for answers. She could call it an island. Stone of earth, added to cement, shaped into a foundation. Tree of earth, cut, created siding and windows to protect from wind and rain and snow. A haven from storms, from the chaotic outer world. A place to hide. She could count on it. Cabinets and closets stored her life. Close and lock the front door, and she was safe. The dog sounded an alarm at any stranger. The phone rarely rang. If she never turned on the television or computer, she could call it an island. I'm going to read some newer things, because I think I got about 5 minutes. I'll read some newer poems and then close up with one. And of course, this goes back to the experience of me being a kid. You know, I think it just all rotates back and rotates back. Carousel. The carousel churned its gears and moved us in a circular rhythm. It was my first trip to the county fair with a friend without my family. I was dressed in purple culottes my mother had sewn by hand and purple Velcro sneakers bought from Sears. My shirt might have been purple too. My favorite companion rode the carousel beside me. He made me feel safe when the other children pointed at my wide mid-calf pants flapping as the carousel took us around on its giant singing wheel. My horse swam up and down, and I laughed at whatever my friend said. The following spring, in the last days of elementary school, we'd find angry words to help us say goodbye, and I'd give him the finger my first time. It would be the only way to make a clean break, but on that painted horse, beside my friend who told dirty jokes I'd only heard from my mother, my friend who always ran the risk of the teacher's wrath, I was safe, moving in a circle that didn't ask me to think ahead or back, or even look around. The best. 6th grade, the junior high band teacher visited my elementary school. He waited in the upstairs room of the library, a place for storage and testing and special requests. I held my sheet of paper marked flute and waited in line. I wanted to learn notes and chords I could sing along to. My turn came, and before I could reveal what I wanted, the band teacher showed me a list of prices. I saw $300 and didn't have to think about it. I wore handmade clothes and rode the bus after school, all over one side of the county to my house. Haircuts at home, and I rarely ate out. My face went hard when I told the teacher I didn't want to join. He tried to encourage and give good reasons why I should, but I wasn't listening. He didn't know each Christmas brought the best my parents could do, the closest they could come to giving me what I wanted. There was no other decision to make, so I walked away in search of something else, something close enough, the best I could do. Habitat in sepia. Everyone's a publicist, trying to sell me their lives. Their pamphlets shine and fold out in 3 panels, glossy with smiles, detailing lives abroad or summers spent on islands. I have no ad copy and an old sepia photo lost. The paint on my house flakes. The grass grows tall before it's cut. The trees slowly blacken and die, one then another taken down. My house stands straight, shining yellow out of a dull background. I touch up the siding. Saplings take root. We grow old together, the house and I. Some afternoons, I drive out to the lake, then return, having seen the sun on the water, blinded by that brightness. Song for the end of the workday. House, I've missed the yellow box of you and the couch where I nap. I've missed the smell of something cooking and the welcomes, wagging tails, the barking. I've missed the wide stairs that lead to quiet spaces and your hours, sunlight making its rounds to every side, every room. Stand and walk, wobbling. Outside their house, outside their obsessions and questions, they don't know you. They think they understand what you want, but they only know what they see, and you won't show them anything else. You won't let them into the darkness of your wild thoughts. Even if you did, once, during a wild moment, you tried, they wouldn't look. They won't peer in. They don't like the shape or smell. You keep your distance. These letters falling down the page, you descend like ladders into deepness. They'll never reach down and gather you up. You'll have to stand and walk, wobbling from the ache of swimming and gathering, holding in your arms what you collect. You'll surface and gulp air. You'll offer greetings. You'll never tell them that you live for this diving, this submerging. this might be the last one. It is. I'll read this one slower because it's in fragments. This is called with, and that's the first word of the poem. Without, within. What is this? Courage. A voice that calms the child, slowly, with acknowledgement, with care, without pushing away or pulling close. Steps that are small. In here. Frame this. Hold it in your palm. Hold still. Thanks, guys.